A Man in Search of Meaning, the story of Viktor. The sky was gray in the morning. Viktor Frankl stood on the train platform with his wife, Tilly. Their hands were intertwined, not just with fingers, but with memories, hope, and silent promises they dared not speak aloud. Around them, hundreds stood in fearful stillness. No one cried. No one spoke. The silence was thicker than any scream. They had heard whispers and rumors of where the trains went, but still clung to the belief that maybe, just maybe, they would stay together. The train arrived with a metallic screech, its black form huffing like a beast come to devour. Shouts pierced the air as soldiers, faceless behind steel and cruelty, forced them aboard. The doors slammed shut, locking away light, air, and dignity. Inside, they were crammed shoulder to shoulder, old, young, sick, pregnant. No food, no water, just the breath of fear and the heat of human despair. When the doors finally opened days later, it wasn't to a city or a shelter. It was Auschwitz. Men to the left, women to the right, shouted a guard. That single moment changed everything. Tilly's hand slipped from Victor's. He looked back. She turned, just for a second, and gave him a faint smile, an ember of courage in the storm. And then she was gone. That was the last time he saw her. He was stripped of everything, his name, clothes, and identity. Now he was prisoner 119104. They shaved his head, threw him rags to wear, and took his life's work, a manuscript he had spent years writing. Gone, tossed in the dirt like trash. Each day blurred into the next. Wake before dawn. Stand in freezing roll call for hours. March. Dig. Starve. Suffer. Watch men die. Smell the smoke of burning bodies and wonder who it was that day. Was it his mother? His brother? Tilly? Yet in this suffocating despair, a faint ember of clarity began to burn inside Victor. He began to notice that not all men were similarly crushed by suffering. Despite their broken bodies, some remained kind, hopeful, and helpful. They shared their last morsels of bread, whispered encouragement, and wrapped arms around the dying. Victor saw something extraordinary. The human spirit could choose its response. He remembered his patients from before the war, those who had come to him, hollowed out by depression, seeking some spark of meaning. And now, in this living hell, the question he had spent a lifetime pondering became as sharp as a blade. What makes life worth living, even here? One night, lying half dead in his bunk, Victor dreamt of giving a lecture. In his vision, he stood before a packed auditorium, his voice steady. We are not merely products of our environment. We are not victims. Between what happens to us and how we respond, there is a space, and in that space lies our freedom. That dream kept him alive. The weeks turned to months. The beatings, the starvation, the executions became part of a twisted routine. And Victor clung to his thoughts, memories of Tilly, and the idea that if he survived, he would teach the world what he had learned. He witnessed the death of hope in others. He saw prisoners lose all belief in the future. Their eyes went dim. They gave up. They lay down in the snow and let death take them. But some survived. Not the strongest, not the smartest, but those who had a reason, a child waiting, a task unfinished, a faith unshaken. A friend said, I had a dream that the war would end on March 30th. I can feel it. But March 30th came, and the war dragged on. That man, once hopeful, died days later, not by bullet or hunger, but from a broken spirit. And Victor understood. Despair is suffering without meaning. When the camp was liberated in 1945, Victor was a skeleton. His limbs were bones under skin. His eyes were heavy with all he had seen. He walked free, but the world he returned to was shattered. Vienna was in ruins. His family is gone. Tilly gone. The grief was unbearable. Some days he didn't want to get out of bed. But he began to rewrite the manuscript he had lost in the camp, which they took from him on day one, from memory. Each word was a defiance against death. Each sentence was a tribute to the fallen. And in that process, he began to heal. His book, Man's Search for Meaning, didn't promise happiness. It promised the truth. It taught that suffering is inevitable, but meaning is possible. And that if one finds meaning, one can endure anything. It resonated deeply. War veterans, grieving parents, suicidal teens, people battling cancer, people in prisons of every kind, literal and emotional. They found hope in Victor's voice. He traveled the world, speaking of what he had seen and learned. He shared stories from the camps, not to horrify, but to reveal the incredible power of human choice. He spoke of a man who, even while being whipped, straightened his back and quoted poetry. Of another who gave away his last piece of bread. Of those who whispered prayers before being marched to their deaths. Heroes in hell. He taught that life was never made unbearable by circumstances, but by a lack of meaning and purpose. He also taught that even in the face of unimaginable loss, we still had the ability to choose our attitude. He founded logotherapy, a therapy of meaning. Patients came not just to be healed, but to find purpose. He didn't ask, "What do you want from life?" He asked, "What does life ask of you?" And this changed everything. He lived to be 92. He married again. He taught thousands. He smiled often, but he never forgot. His heart always carried the memory of the camp, the cold, and the people who didn't make it, of Tilly. And in every lecture, book, and life he touched, he kept them alive. His message? Simple, eternal. Even when we are helpless, we are never hopeless. Meaning is always within reach. And when we find it, we become truly free. So, when the nights are long and heavy, when suffering knocks at your door, remember Victor's story, not to diminish your pain, but to remind you of your power. The power to choose your response, the power to find purpose in the darkest hours, and to walk, even in the fire, with dignity. Because if a man in Auschwitz could do it, so can we. And that is the meaning that never dies. That's it for now. Please comment on what you learned from this story. Thanks for your time. See you later.